I was just on somebody else's channel. I don't know their name. It just come across my live feed. They were live. And I started to make some I think good points in the comments. And they banned me from commenting. And it's basically it's very typical that that atheists who don't believe in God, but they hate the character of God. Like, they don't believe God's real, but the God that's spoken about in the Bible, they hate that God for the same reason. They always say, why does God allow suffering? And I really think that there's better ways to argue for atheism than to just say, well, bad things happen, so that means God would be evil. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever. And I just think that a lot of these, not all, but like a lot of these people who reject God and hate God for the sake of suffering happening in their lives are just really weak, pathetic people. Like, just absolute bitches, excuse me for saying. I mean, just imagine if no hardship ever happened, there was no pain, there was no suffering, it was all pleasure and bliss all day long, no bad guys, no obstacles. You know how that would be a hell in itself, because, like, you go in, like, let's say you go to someone's house, what story are you going to tell? What happened today? Well, I had no work to do. I had nothing to overcome. Nothing bad happened. Nothing challenged me. There was nothing to develop. There was nothing going on. Everybody just sitting there just like drugged out on pleasure, just drooling, I feel good, and doing nothing. Like, what do you expect? How do you expect there to be life where, so everything's got to eat something else that's alive? There's gonna be, there's no story. You can't have a character in a story or a story without there being some kind of resistance, some kind of, and then how is God supposed to make a being with nerves that can feel pleasure that isn't also able to feel pain? Because it's a spectrum there of, like, that's why a lot of people, it's not necessarily that they I mean, this is what I mostly hear from atheists. The reason they don't want to believe in God, the reason they say, they say, well, why does bad things happen? A kid got cancer. A kid got starved to death. But what if, how are you supposed to not have hunger? And I mean, like, you eat something, you have hunger, so you have a need to get food. You get food, you feel good, you're satisfied. There's no way to have the satisfaction of being full without the possibility of being hunger. And without the hunger, how are you supposed to know when to eat and how not to overeat? You've got to have, hot and cold. It's just like how much heat is there, how much energy is there. It's like opposites on the same. It's a spectrum, It's like it's polarity, like And then if nothing ever died, and everything just kept reproducing, eventually there's no room for anything. All the resources run out. How are you supposed to have, like, infinite pleasure, infinite resources, nothing bad? Like, it's just a lot of people are just weak, and they can't be grateful for life, and they can't accept the pleasure with the pain. And their idea of a good God is a God that just gives you everything for nothing and you never have to, nothing. Like, what kind? You can't even make a creation if the creation is everything's good and there's nothing to do. There's no reason to strive for anything. Everything is just alive and live. It takes a purpose away from everything. If a lion, a part of a lion being a lion and a gazelle being a gazelle is the gazelle being able to run away from the lion and the lion being able to ambush the gazelle. The reason that they have the shape and form they do is because of each other, And what kind of life would either the gazelle or the lion have if every day they didn't need to eat, they never got hungry, there was nothing for anybody to do, everybody would just be bored? Like, do atheists ever take the time to try to imagine the kind of world that they're saying for God to be good, the world would have to be to where everything's just a hedonistic, just like, it's not reasonable. It's not a reasonable ask to say, well, something bad happened, so that means God's evil. And I think that they put more focus on wanting pleasure in their physical body than wanting to develop their mind and character and to develop into something. And the way I look at life, it's beautiful. It's like, countless stories. You look at each individual life form, human, animal, plant, everything has a story. Everything had some kind of something to overcome. And it give the experience of life meaning, It would be just mind-numbingly boring if there was nothing bad. And I'm not, like, everything that we say is bad isn't really bad in the grand scheme of things. To the gazelle it may seem bad that a lion eats it, but a lion eating a gazelle is not really a bad thing. That I just don't understand that whole thing. I don't understand it. Now there's things where I can like I'm saying, like, I don't understand the purpose of an eternal hell. But I'm just saying that atheists have too high expectations. Like, how in the world are you you're saying God's not good, and if he creates any suffering whatsoever in the creation is supposed to have absolutely no suffering, no pain. I don't know. To me, it just seems like they're really coming from a place of weakness, like extreme weakness. Extreme cowardness, extreme weakness, to just be like, oh, something, bad things happen, and then just not take that into context of all the good things that happen. And all the good things that can happen because there's something bad to overcome. How are you supposed to develop the virtues without the possibility of vices? How are you supposed to be courageous if there's no enemy? How are you supposed to have the greatest amount of love to lay down your life to protect someone you love if there's no danger? And then how are you supposed to be wise if you don't have to discern between truth and lies? Like, how? And if everything is just perfect all the time, there's nothing to do. There's no reason to do anything. How are you supposed to have a conversation with another person in a universe where there's no pain or suffering? How do you have any conversation with anybody about anything happening? What happened today? Well, I was just in mind-numbing pleasure all day long for no reason. pain and pleasure cease to be incentives for anything. You're just like, we just feel good all the time for no. You wouldn't even know that you was feeling good because you'd have nothing to compare it to.